Hey, welcome along to this online Arise Care resource. We're so grateful that you joined us here today. And we're so excited because today we're going to be learning about well-being and mental health. We're so honored to have the one and only Richard Black sharing with us today. So make sure you find a comfy seat, get ready to take some notes, and enjoy this content.
Well, welcome to our last session. You've done very well to stick with us, to stick through this series, this journey to this point now. And what we're looking at in this fourth topic, this fourth session, is I want to introduce you to some proactive habits that can help to create a stronger version of you. You see, I find that many people can be running on autopilot. They just do and think and feel whatever they do and think and feel. And they just carry on doing it. And they get into certain patterns and certain habits in their life, some of which they see modeled to them from other people, some of which are their own unique ones that they've picked up on. But many times they don't stop to question, is this actually helping me, or is this hurting me or even harming me? Is this actually going to advance my life in the direction where I want to go? So I want to introduce you to 5 key proactive habits and 5 key, in one regard, proactive shifts from one way of being that's very common, that's very human, that happens a lot in our society, to a different way of being that's far more constructive. So the different 5 to start with are these. The first one there is moving from blaming to ownership. You see, one of the things that's so easy and so common for all of us as humans is when something goes wrong in our life, when we feel upset, when we feel hurt, when we feel like we're trapped, we're stuck, where do we point in terms of the causation of all of this? If you're like most people, you point to another person or an event or a situation. You know, one of the things that I find when we talk about two people in conflict, the two people who are in conflict have one thing in common. They're each very aware of what the other person's doing wrong. And if the other person just stopped it, I would be fine. It would be okay. I could carry on with my life. Now, you see, one of the difficulties there is that if someone else is responsible for the way that I'm feeling and what I do, well, what that says is, where does the power lie? The power lies in the other person. The power lies with them. And so I'm, in many ways, powerless until they change. And so even though it can be quite delightful to blame another person for the way that I feel or for what's going on, and please don't mishear me, they may have significantly contributed to what's going on for you. But even though it can be quite delightful, it renders us powerless. And at times we can get caught up in it where we end up giving away our power to other people and to circumstances, because there is something quite delightful that we get back. And I don't know if you know what that is. It's innocence. One of our deep needs that I talked about in the previous session. You see, when something is someone else's fault, well, then you can't blame me. It's not on me. I'm the innocent party here, and that feels delightful, which is why at times, especially in arguments, we might move to blaming or deflecting or saying, me, well, what about you? Because if I can gain a sense of innocence, that feels reassuring that I'm okay inside. And so what we want to do in this is, as we move from blaming to ownership, we start to regain back our power. But it's not always easy to look at. See, let me put it this way. Let me ask you, if we think about boundaries, about responsibilities, about what's in my world and what I'm responsible for, and what's in another person's world and what they're responsible for. I mean, if we just looked at that generally, what, generally speaking, are the sorts of things that I am responsible for that's on my side of the boundary line? It's what sort of thing, people? What am I responsible for? My words, yeah, what I say, and also how I say it, the tone that I might use. Great, what else? My responses, my response to you, or whether we call it my response or my reaction to you, that's my responsibility. What else? My feelings, yeah, the way I feel and what I'm feeling is my responsibility. What else? Yeah, my actions as well. So in this, there are the things like my thoughts, what I'm thinking, my assumptions, what I assumed you meant when you said or did something. My feelings, how I feel at any given moment, whether it be because of what you've done or me by myself, my feelings are my responsibility. And also my actions, my reactions, and my needs and my wants, among other things. That these are the sorts of things that I am responsible for. Now, of course, if that's in my world, if that's what I'm responsible for, what's in the other person's world? What are they responsible for? The same things, it's just on their side. I mean, that's not rocket science, really, is it? And so in my world, I'm responsible for my thoughts, my assumptions, my feelings, my actions, my reactions, my needs, my wants. And this is what I refer to as zone one. That's my zone, zone one. And I need to learn to own my zone. And in your world, well, you've got your thoughts, whatever you were assuming, whatever you're feeling, whatever actions you do, your reactions, your needs, your wants. That's your responsibility. Now, of course, when we look at it like this, in black and white, you know, with a line down the middle, we can all nod our head and we can say, yep, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Until, of course, we encounter something like conflict and another person behaving incredibly badly or unpleasantly. And now, when I feel upset, who's responsible for my feelings now? When we go, well, you know, when you look at that, I know I'm responsible for my feelings, but boy, it feels like they're responsible because do you know what? I was fine before they said or did something. I was minding my own business. I was okay, but then they failed to do what they said they would do or what I wanted them to do. And now I feel upset. Now I feel angry. Now I feel anxious. And who's responsible? Well, it must be them. And that's where things start to get messy, when we bring in other people. You are the most perfect, controlled, well-adjusted human being, and then another person enters the room. And that's the way we tend to live, isn't it? And of course, when the other person comes in, well, now it's very human for us to identify someone else as the source of our emotions. And it makes sense because I was feeling fine or okay until you failed to do or did what I didn't want you to do. But it's recognizing that as we look at this nice, clear, neat image up here on the board, my feelings remain my feelings. They remain my responsibility. Now, please don't mishear me. That doesn't justify someone else behaving badly towards you. It isn't saying your feelings are your feelings, so suck it up, buttercup, and just put up with it, and people should be able to treat you however they want. I'm not saying that at all. When we look at this and we understand zone 1 and zone 2, on zone 2, your behavior, your actions, your reactions to me, that is your responsibility, and I can hold you to account for what you've done or what you failed to do. But I need to understand, I need to own my zone. I need to own zone 1. That in zone 1, my feelings are my responsibility. That also in zone 1, my reactions are my responsibility. Well, you know, I only yelled at you because you were yelling at me. Well, I only shut down and gave you the cold shoulder because of the way you treated me or what I wanted you to do. Whereas no, when we bring it back down, my reactions are actually my responsibility. It might be understandable why I did what I did, but let's not confuse understandable with excusable. I still have to take responsibility for my side. I still have to own my side in this. And so I cannot allow your poor behavior to justify my poor behavior. Regardless of your poor behavior, I remain responsible for my behavior. You see, if you are responsible for how I feel, I'm powerless until you treat me differently, until you change the way you are. My happiness remains in your hands, and you control whether I'm going to be okay or not. But equally, unless you change, well, then I can't change my reactions, my responses, why I do certain things. Whereas, no, the way I react, the way I respond to you, the way I treat you, regardless of what you've done, is my responsibility. And so I need to make sure, I need to check, is the way that I'm reacting, the way that I'm responding, constructive to us or destructive? Because if it's not constructive, it's never justified. Now, part of my boundary setting might be to clarify my boundary, to communicate what I will and what I won't put up with. Also in this, that my needs and my wants are my responsibility. That if I have a need, I need to ask for it. Be it a need to understand, be it a need from a loved one, be it a need for a government agency. If I have a need, I need to ask for it. It would be wonderful if they just knew. It would be wonderful if they could read my mind. It could be wonderful if they heard me the first time and responded. And they are responsible for the way they're acting. But if I have a need, then I need to advocate for that need, for that want. It has to be my responsibility. Otherwise, what we do is we make ourselves powerless in this world and in this life. And as such, everyone else begins to have far more power over us. And so this is often a commonplace, as I mentioned, when we move into places and situations of conflict. It is so easy when we're upset to point the blame at the other person, to justify our reactions, and to wait for them to come and apologize to us, because we're that magnanimous, we'll receive their apology anytime they're ready to give us. And we know that really we can wait because they're the problem, and we'll just wait for them to sort their stuff out, because they're the issue. And what I find that happens in this kind of reactionary way of being is there's something known as minimizing and maximizing. And what happens at that point is, especially when we're in conflict, we tend to maximize someone else's contribution. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe you did that. That is huge. That is unbelievable. That is horrible. And what we also do is we minimize our contribution. You know what? I know I'm not perfect in this. Sure, I wasn't behaving perfectly, but have a look at the way they've behaved. And at times we will flip it around where we'll maximize our contribution to sort of, I tried to speak to you, I did this huge thing. And sure, you did some things, but really, they're really tiny and small, and we really don't even need to talk about them. And so what we end up doing in this is maximizing and minimizing in a way that is unhelpful in our relationships. So if we are to be proactive, if we're to live our life on purpose, if we're to live life with purpose, we first of all got to regain our power to the degree that we can. And with that, we take responsibility for what's on our side. We own our zone. This is what I refer to as zone 1 living. That when we live in zone 1, we clean up our side, we influence where we can influence, and we still ask other people to clean up their side of the fence after we've cleaned up our side. But so many people, in a powerless kind of way, in a learned helplessness kind of way, are zone 2 people. They focus on what everyone else or someone else has to do differently in order for my life to be okay. And that isn't to say that there isn't an influencing factor from zone 2. What I'm saying is the place where you position yourself will determine whether you are increasing and enhancing your influence and the power that you have in this world, or you're minimizing and decreasing that, so you can't do as much. And so let's come back to zone 1 living. Let's move from blaming to owning my emotions, owning my actions, my reactions, rather than easily defaulting into the blaming and into that zone 2 living. So the first one there is owning rather than blaming to gain back our power. The second key proactive habit here is moving from dumping to encouragement. And this goes back to what we were looking at in our second session, that it is so easy and so common for people to dump on themselves, to beat up on themselves, to say, I'm not good, I'm horrible, this is bad, I've stuffed it, I haven't done well. And all of those ants come out, and there's a whole lot of dumping and condemnation. Do you know, one of the things that I say is that condemnation never leads to transformation. Transformation actually comes out of love. You know, when people dump on themselves, when they criticize themselves, when they beat up on themselves, when I ask them, you know, how is that helping? What's the purpose behind this? They will often say, well, I made a dumb mistake and I don't want to make that mistake again. So there's a kind of sense that says, if I beat up on myself enough, if I tell myself off enough, then I'll never do that again. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that. And that's the same way of a teacher or a parent saying that if I scold a kid enough, if I tell them how stupid and dumb and horrible they're being, they're now going to become the perfect little angel. They're now going to become a well-adjusted human being. They're not. All that happens is that eats away at who they are. What brings transformation is love. It's encouragement. I'll work with some people who say, look, I see that I am significantly overweight and I hate my body. I hate it. And there are times I feel bad about myself and then I find myself comfort eating again and then I hate myself even more. And I said, that makes perfect sense. Because of course, if you're hating yourself, what do you need? You need nurture. You need acceptance. You need care. And in your mind, where do you get nurture, acceptance, and care from? Well, it comes from food. So I eat. Food seems to give me nurture and acceptance and care. And then I realize what I've done, and then I hate myself, and I go around and around. I said, the place to begin is actually through accepting and loving yourself. So that when you stand in front of the mirror and you see all that your weight is on your body, and you see all of your wobbly bits, be grateful for your body. Give thanks for your body. Give thanks for the wobbly bits. Love the wobbly bits. You know, in the same way that you would love a little child, your body in the same way is like that little child. So you want to respond to your body by saying, body, you're lovely. In the same way, if you saw a chubby little body of a little child, there's probably what a lovely chubby little body it is. What a delightful creature that being is. How much I love you, especially if you're my own. There's just a whole lot of love towards you. And hey, look, if we need to do things differently, if we need to lose some weight, if we need to do that, that's fine. Let's do that together with love. So when we respond to our body, when we respond to ourselves with love, with encouragement, rather than dumping and chastising ourselves in condemnation, when we go, right, that was a big stuff up, wasn't it? Let's do something about it. And you don't accept it as a judgment in you, you accept it as behavior to change. When you realize that you are that little child with infinite worth and value, then the behavior that's coming from you is behavior that may need to be corrected, but it's not the essence of you. And what is the problem is when we dump and chastise ourselves and condemn ourselves, we take that into the core of our being, and that gets written on the I am of who I am. Whereas it's not meant to be there. This is behavior that may need to be different. And so let's move from dumping in and condemning and chastising ourselves to encouraging ourselves. And so a couple of tools to help you in encouraging yourself. One tool in this is to move to creating a sense of gratitude. You know, your brain goes after what you focus on. And when you start to genuinely be grateful for different aspects in your life, it shifts your thoughts and your feelings. Now, I saw a wee while ago that this became one of those Facebook habits where people would write 10 things I'm grateful for each day for 10 weeks, and they went on, and as they were trying to think up something new, it lost some of its power. What am I grateful for? Well, I'm grateful that there was a petrol station at the end of my street. Well, I'm grateful that I got to have a chocolate bar. Well, we want to make sure that whatever you're grateful for, you are genuinely grateful for, something you connect your heart for. You know, whether it be that I have air in my lungs, that I have strength in my body, that I have certain loved ones in my life, even if they are filled with a variety of difficulties in being with them. Thank you, God, that I have them in my life. That I am grateful for the home that I have or the food that I have. That I'm grateful for the things that seem difficult. Like, Lord, I'm grateful for the high power bill this winter. Why? Because it means I was actually warm. I'm grateful for the fact that I got the last park furthest away from the place because it means I've actually got the body and the physical ability to walk, and this is going to be good for me. You know, I remember at one point I was leading a group of young adults, and it was a lot of work, and I needed to do some things, and I remember at one point someone who lived on the outskirts of town. And I thought, okay, I've got to go get them as well. And someone else in the group said, oh, hey, look, I spoke with my mum and dad, and we're okay to go get them and bring them in each week. I went, oh, brilliant. Thanks so much. And they did that time. And then the next week I said, and you'll be okay to bring them in. And they went, oh, no, we only meant that once. And I'm like, that's not how I recall it. And so what was going on inside of me at that point was, oh, typical. You know, I have to do all of this as well as get in my car, go far out, get that other person. I mean, why can't somebody else do something? It's all on me. And then I felt like God say to me in that, Richard, why is it good to be you doing this? To which I responded, it's not. I said, all right, I'll think about it. Why is it good to me doing this? Well, it means that I need to get this person because this person's a part of a group. Why am I having to do it? Because I'm the leader of this group, and I always wanted to be a leader. Richard, this is just a side effect of you being a leader. And I went, oh, yeah. And something inside internally shifted. And I went with a pleasant disposition to pick up the person. We had a great conversation on the way back. And I was no longer grumpy or bleeding out emotional energy. So it was encouraging myself and being grateful for even these difficult situations. Why is it good to be you doing this? And your first response will be, it's not. But when you start to think about it, there are also other things in that to which I can be grateful for. I can be grateful for what I have in my life. And I mean genuinely, not in some kind of trite kind of way. And as you connect your heart to the things that you are genuinely grateful for, encouragement returns over despondency. But the other thing, this is a tool that a guy called Martin Seligman from his book Flourished shared. He said that at times when things feel overwhelming, when things feel quite dark, sometimes you can get so focused on all the things that are going wrong, you can get so captivated for all the feelings that are telling you things are going wrong, that what can be helpful is each night to consider 3 things. What went well today? And even if 3 things are hard, find one thing. What went well today? Well, actually, I didn't stuff up at work. What went well today? I had a coffee with a friend, whatever it may be. What went well today? And list them out. And that's important, but the next question is also key. And why? Why did it go well? Because I did my work diligently, I've got the skill set, because I've got a friend in my life, because I have someone who cares about me. And you see, as you start to focus on what went well and why it went well, we can move to a place of encouragement. And you can start to shift that confirmation bias that it's all horrible and everything's bad. And you can start to notice what may seem like just minor exceptions, little green shoots in your life. But my friends, as you begin to notice those little green shoots, the little things that go well, that are well, and why they're well, and things you're grateful for, as you notice the green shoots, every noticing of the green shoot is like watering it. And it begins to grow and grow and grow until there's more of an attitude of encouragement inside of you rather than one of despondency and dumping on you. The third tool that we've got here is moving from shoulding to choosing. You see, many people can get very caught up in shoulding on themselves. They should on themselves or they should on other people. And they do it all the time. You know, this is what I should do, or I shouldn't do that, or you should do that, or if you really cared, you should do this. And all of that's just really unhelpful. But it's the mindset that's so easy for us to get caught up in. And you see, shoulding, in one sense, is a form of external motivation. So when you were a child and your mum or your dad said things to you like, you know, you've got to finish your plate, you've got to finish your dinner, you've got to eat those vegetables. Yeah, but I don't want to. Well, you have to. All right, I'll do that. Or, no, well, if you want to go out to friends, you've got to tidy up your room, you've got to get that tidy, you've got to get that clean. Well, I don't want to do that. Well, you're not going anywhere until you've done. All right, I'll go. And so as a child, there are loads of things that we felt like we've had to do, but we haven't really wanted to do. So you've done it, but you're standing up on the inside while you do it. And the thing is that we take that through. So when we are divided in ourselves, we move to a shoulding-based mindset. You know, like when I was talking about before, if you were wanting to lose weight and you go, oh, you know, I really shouldn't eat this chocolate biscuit. I really shouldn't eat this packet of chocolate biscuits. Or I really should go for a run. Or I really should do this. But of course, what's going on inside? Yeah, but I don't want to. I know, but I should. All right, I'll go do it. As if there is this big person telling you what you should do. And you may do it, but you white knuckle your way through it because you never really want to do it anyway. And it's like there's this big person telling you what you should do. Although what we need to wake up to is, there is no big person. It's only you. And so it's time to step out of this more child-based, being told what to do mindset into you choosing what you do and owning your choices mindset. Because what happens is when we get caught in this should-based mindset, well now, because it's like a child-based mindset, and we don't really want to do it anyway, we'll look for loopholes. Because you go, okay, so like, you know, if we go, do you know what, I said I would have one chocolate biscuit or one packet of chocolate biscuit. I could only have one packet each day. And do you know what? It's 11:30 at night now, so if I wait half an hour, it's technically tomorrow, so I can have another packet. So that would be great. And then, of course, you have the other packet, and then you wake up the next morning, and then you go, well, that was technically the night before, wasn't it? So I can probably have another packet today. And so you look for the loopholes to get through it. Or in the child-based mindset, you'll look for ways to reward yourself. Because if you've not really wanting to do this, but you're having to do this, you should do this, well, then your brain says, well, you're being a good boy or girl, and so I deserve a reward. Now, of course, if that's around fitness and food, that ain't going to go well for you, is it? You know, I walked to the letterbox, that deserves a whole packet of chocolate biscuits. Or I went for a run, well, now I can have McDonald's. And all of that. And you look for the reward to treat yourself. Whereas, as an adult, one of the things that I'll say is there are no shoulds here. There is only what you choose to do and what you choose not to do. Now, as an adult, though, you get to choose it, and you also choose the consequence of it. And that's the difference. Because at times we will move into this reward-based thinking, but in fact, when you are the adult choosing what you want to choose for your well-being, that is the reward. I had one person who said to me, look, I come home after a long day at work and you know what? I just want the whole family to leave me alone. I just want to watch TV, watch a movie, sit down with a beer, have everyone disappear, and this is my time because, they said, I deserve it. And I went, oh, okay. I said, so, sorry, help me understand. Why do you deserve this? And he said, because I've been working all week, working hard, this is for me. And I said, okay, let me ask you, do you not like your job? He goes, oh no, I love my job. My job's good. So if you're doing a job all through the week that you actually enjoy, why do you deserve this? Why is this rewarding you? What you're doing is the reward. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to choose to watch TV, drink a beer, and engage that, you can. Why? Because you are an adult and you get to make your own choices and you get the consequences of those choices. And so it's time to stop disempowering yourself under shoulds. It's time to step out of that child-based mindset that says, I don't really want to do this, to recognize you don't have to do anything. You are the adult. There are no shoulds here. There is only what you choose to do and what you choose not to do. You get to make that choice, but you get the consequences of your choice as well. It's time to get your power back. And I've had people do this, go, oh, this is great. Do you know what? I am going to choose that chocolate biscuit. And I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to, because I get to choose. And I go, that's right. And as they keep doing this, after a while, they realize nothing's changing. Well, nothing's changing for the good anyway. Nothing's changing. And that's right, you have the right to choose like that chocolate biscuit. But nothing's changing. And that's the delusion that we put ourselves in when we look for loopholes. Because we're doing this. You can play whatever games you want with yourself, but when you make that choice, the consequences are yours as well. And at that point, I do want people, when they're being in a should-based mindset, to start to intentionally choose. But when they intentionally choose, for argument's sake, this chocolate biscuit, to recognize that I am choosing this, and I can because I'm the grown-up, and I am choosing the consequence of whatever it might be with this one biscuit. Now, that may not be much, but if it's continuing in a repeated pattern, well, now the consequence begins to increase. And you can choose to do that, but you get the consequence of your choice. And so part of stepping out of a should-based mindset into this adult-based mindset is to recognize that I am the adult here. I am the big person. There is no other big person wagging their finger and telling me what I should or shouldn't do. And if there is, like a spouse in your life or a parent in your life like that, it's still recognizing, but you still get to make that choice. And you still get to choose and check, is my choosing helping me or hurting me? Working with me or working against me? What is it that I want my choosing to achieve? And what's going to help me in doing that? So when I gain ownership of that and ownership over my choosing, I no longer should on myself. I make sure that my heart is in what I'm choosing, knowing that I'm the adult, I get to choose, and I get the consequences. Step out of the child mindset into the adult mindset, move away from that external motivation to again owning it. You have to own the reason why you're doing whatever you're doing. No one else can do that for you. And shoulding doesn't help you in doing that. It just causes you to white knuckle through what you're doing rather than be changed by what you're doing. The next key point here is moving, that's connected to that, moving from pretending to agreement. Now, what can happen is that so often many of us can fall into a pretend agreement as opposed to a true agreement. Now, the difference in this, the difference between the two of these is that your heart isn't in specifically what you are doing. So I don't know if you've ever had, say, a friend say to you, hey, can you come and help me move house on Saturday morning? And you go, yeah, sure, I can do that. And you turn up. And then you notice Saturday morning becomes Saturday afternoon. And you go, hold on, when did I sign up for this? Someone asked you to volunteer for an activity. And you go, yeah, sure, I can probably do that for a month or so. And then you realize 5 years later, you're still there doing the same thing. And maybe they kept you in place by saying, well, you see, we've really got no one else to do it. That we need you to do it. Oh, right, okay, I'll do it. You know, I remember when I was training, and part of my training, I had a list of people that I would go and do kind of pastoral visiting with. I'd get around, I'd go visit these people. And there was one person that was always on my list that when it was my time to visit them, I was just like, oh, okay, I'll go visit them. Now, was I doing the activity? Yes. Was I doing the activity willingly? No. Was my heart in that activity? No. And you see, when you look like you've said yes to an activity, but your heart is screaming, no, I don't want to do this, it creates an internal tension in you, which is unpleasant, and you bleed out emotional energy. But it also creates tension between you and perhaps the other person who asked you to do this in the first place. And as a result, you bleed out emotional energy with that person as well. And so in this, it can be incredibly draining. So when I would go and do this kind of pastoral visiting, I would get through it and it would be horrible. And I would come out the other side. And then at one point, it occurred to me, Richard, you can do this kicking and screaming. You can drag your heart through this whole experience. But it's going to be unpleasant for you and for the other person. Or, at the time, the language was, you can lean into this. You can accept this. You can do this willingly. And I went, yep, that's exactly right. And so I chose to do it. And as I went about and I did the pastoral care visit that time and I saw the person, actually it wasn't so bad this time. It was actually a lot easier. And understandably so, because I wasn't bleeding out emotional energy. I wasn't in tension and internal conflict to start with in the first place. So we need to make sure that our yes is yes and our no is no. So one of the things that I'll often say is that if my heart can't say yes to this, my mouth needs to say no until I work out what I need in order to say yes. And this can be in our relationships, in our workplaces, in our schools, in our families, in all of these places and times. See, if you want to know where you are pretending to be in agreement in any way, do a scan of your life, whether family, friends, workplaces, hobbies, communities, wherever you may go, do a scan of your life and let me ask you, where are you doing anything resentfully or reluctantly? You see, if you find where you're doing anything resentfully or reluctantly and you follow that down, you will often find where you are pretending to be in agreement rather than being in a true agreement. Now, when you discover that, it's time to stop. And there might be one of three things that you'll need to do. The first thing that you may need to do is consider to yourself, what do I need actually in order to say yes to this? And sometimes you may have said yes to something and you need to go back to the person and say, hey, look, I know I said yes to this. I know I said I could help you all day Saturday to move house, but really I can only do until lunchtime. It might be that you need to go to your boss and say, look, I am willing to take on that project so long as you can take some of this other pressure off me, or that you provide me with additional resources or people, or you just pay me more. There may be other conditions that make this okay. You know, I remember once when I came down from Upper Hardin, came down, and I was helping out at our local church. And I said to the people there, I said, hey, look, I've stepped out of pastoral ministry. I've stepped into coming down here to do some other things. I'm here to help. How can I help serve? And they said, oh, that's great. Well, we really need help with the children's program. And I thought, this is a really unusual church. I know of no others that really need help in the children's program. They all seem to for some reason. And I thought, you know what? I can do that. I can create programs. I can work with children. It's not my passion. It's not my area of expertise, but I can certainly do that. So I said, sure, I can do it for a year. Now that was the condition I needed to put on it. And for many people, what can help move pretending to a true agreement is a time frame. And I said, sure, I can do this for a year. And so when my name came up on the roster, I didn't go, oh, really, that again? Because I'd chosen to do this. I also didn't go, oh, I wonder who else I can get to do this. My heart was in it. I chose to do it willingly. Now, if someone had come to me and said, Richard, you no longer have to do that, I would go, thank you, God, I'm moving on. But I did it willingly. And as I did it, and I turned up, and there was never an issue, and I filled my place, and I did that right to the end. And then when we got to the end of the year, I said, and that's me done, thanks so much. And I didn't stop to ask, are you sure you've got someone else to fill the role? Part of our agreement was, I will give you me, and I will give you me with my good attitude, my investment, my commitment, my involvement. And what you give me is the time frame. And now we can work together in true agreement. So sometimes what's needed to move from pretending to agreement, there are other conditions. What would I need in order to be okay to do this? The second thing that sometimes may need to happen is that we realize, actually, there are no conditions that's going to make this work for me. I actually genuinely need to say no to this. So the question then is, if I can't say yes to this, what can I say yes to? No, look, I can't help you on Saturday, but I'll tell you what I can do. I'll come over afterwards during the week and I'll help you unpack. Or I can help you leading up to it to pack some boxes and get it ready. I can't work on that project, but I can provide additional support for somebody else who's doing that project. So if I can't say yes to this, then what can I say yes to? The third area is recognizing that sometimes there are just some things you have to do. I keep getting told that I actually have to feed my children and care for them. So at that point, when there are things that you have to do, but perhaps you haven't necessarily wanted to do, but they are things that you have to do, then like with me going around doing that visiting, pick your heart up and put it back in your chest and choose to do it willingly. Even if in one regard you're powerless, you just have to do this. What you still have choice over, what you still have power over, I should say, is your choice. That I will choose to do it and I will do it willingly. I will be present. Because I don't know if you've ever run different groups or different organizations where a person has turned up and they're doing the job, but their heart is somewhere else. Their heart is off having coffee. Their heart is in bed. Their heart is still at home doing the gardening. And that can be very difficult to work with. But what we want for you and for others is if you have said yes, you own your yes. If you have said yes, then you also check what you might need in order to fully own your yes. And you put your heart into your yes. And you do it willingly. That doesn't mean that you do it as if it's the greatest pleasure and passion in your life. But what you don't do is internally grumble about it, dragging your heart along, because all that does is bleed you out of emotional energy. And the more that we can take responsibility for our yes and our no, the more empowered we find we are, and the more whole we find we are, and that we're not bleeding out of this emotional energy. So as I said there, if my heart can't say yes, then my mouth needs to say no until I work out what I need to say yes. There are three things that go together for a true agreement. You are saying yes with your mouth, you are saying yes with your heart, and you're saying yes with your actions. I'll meet people who will say yes with their mouth and yes with their heart, but then they never show up. Or you'll have people like we looked at who are saying yes with their mouth and yes with their actions, but their heart is screaming no. And we need to make sure all three come together. Although when we work with other people, what we find is we will tolerate their pretending to be in agreement because at least it's getting the job done. And so as much as we can from our side as well as from other people's side, don't just pretend and don't tolerate pretending from other people. Live out of true agreement. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And the final one there is moving from avoidance to engagement. You know, one of the things that I find is that especially when you get caught up in any conflict or anything that makes you feel anxious, it is a common human pattern that we move away from things that feel painful and we move towards things that feel pleasurable. And so what happens is if that you're in the midst of conflict or difficulty or something that makes you feel anxious, then what your brain will say is, do you know what? Just don't do it. I mean, why would you do that? It's awful. It's horrible. Just avoid it. Shut down. Hide away. Stay home. Keep under the covers. Just get away from everything. And it feels like that's serving you. Although one of the difficulties is the more you avoid something, the stronger and the bigger it gets. And often what I find, and my clients find, is that the anticipation of the event is usually worse than the reality of going through it. Because when you anticipate it, when you are imagining it, you're imagining this big, horrible thing. But of course, because you're not engaging with it, you're doing it powerlessly. It's just something in your mind. But in fact, when you move to engagement, now you start to get your power back, and now you find you dial down the fear. You've actually can work through it. Do you know, one of the things I remember growing up, and as I was growing up with different family members, there was one family member in our sort of wider extended family group who I remember one time they got asked to babysit, and they did the job, and then they came back and then they said, do you know what? That person, they still haven't paid me. They still haven't paid me for that. I can't believe it. Why would you ask someone to come over and babysit if you're not going to pay them? I mean, surely they would take this as responsibility. I'm just so unhappy. And this would go around and around and around. And I said to them at one point, well, if you're unhappy with the fact that they haven't paid, you could always go and ask, hey, I know it wasn't convenient last night, but I'm now ready to be paid. Thanks. And they said, well, why should I have to? Because, you know, they're the ones who are supposed to do it. And I said, that's right. But why should you have to? I said, well, you don't have to unless you want to get paid. The choice is yours. And so as our family, as part of our black family rule, we have one main rule in this area, which is you are allowed to complain about something once, but then you have to do something about it. Or shut up about it. In other words, find a way of accepting it. I had someone else say to me, well, Richard, you need to understand that sometimes people are only happy when they're complaining about things. I said, that may well be the case, but I don't have to listen to it. Like I would say to my children at times, that's absolutely fine if you want to express your unhappiness on the floor with that level of volume. It's just that you're going to do it in your bedroom, not here. So in this, one of the things we want to do is we want to move away from avoidance to engagement. And whether it be about complaining about other people, and that comes back to owning my zone, or it might be around things that we've known we've wanted to do, things that we felt we should do, but just have felt too scary, too difficult. One of the things that we need to do is to get in all the information we can. Like if you were planning to study and yet it all felt so big and you just don't really know what you're going to do, well, one of the ways to start is get in all the information from the tertiary institutions, from the different courses, looking at the different expectations, checking out all of those different things. The other thing that we do as we try to engage, we get in all of that, and at times we can feel overloaded, and it's like the next step to do just feels too big. We know what we need to do, we say to ourselves, it's too hard to get there. Well, at times what I'll say to people is, if you know what the next steps are, but it's all too hard to get there, one of the things that can help here is you need to break down what you know to do, the next thing you need to do, into a much smaller step. In fact, sometimes you need to break it down into ridiculously small steps. Sometimes as I've worked with my clients who are depressed, clients who are anxious, and they'll say, just facing the day is all too much. It's all too hard. I'll say, okay, like what? What have you got on? Well, I've got to get on. I've got to get to work. I've got this project on it at university or school. I've got all this kinds of stuff. And they'll tell me all the things. I'd go, whoa. I'd go, as I hear that and I try to think about that, that overwhelms me. I say, so let's dial it back into ridiculously small steps. I say, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you need to do? I need to get off to work. No. Dial it back. When you wake up in the morning, the first thing you need to do is sit up. Now that you've conquered that, goal achieved, tick. Now what do I need to do? Stand up, tick. Go to the toilet, go have a shower, go get breakfast, head off, but then break it down into ridiculously small steps and then just do the next one in front of you. The other thing that many people find, like when they're trying to study or they're struggling with their emotions but getting off to work, once they're at work, things are okay. I'll say, don't look for the motivation in you right now, because it's not there. If you're looking for the motivation to start, you won't find it. Give yourself permission to do the next ridiculously small step, knowing that when you warm your brain up, you're actually going to find that it's okay. Once you've got your shoes on and you're going out for a walk and you're going out for a run or whatever, that once you get going, you often tell yourself, then it's okay. So don't expect the motivation to be there right from the beginning. Just do the steps, knowing that you will warm up to motivation, but that is coming. That is a side effect, a byproduct of doing some of the initial ridiculously small steps until your brain is warmed up in that area. And so we want to recognize that avoiding is never actually helping you or protecting you like it feels. It might be that you need to engage. Engage in asking for what you need. Engage in getting in the information that you need. Engage by doing the things that you know you want to do, but just breaking them down into ridiculously small steps. So those are 5 of a number of proactive habits. Move from blaming to ownership and get your power back and live in zone 1. Move from dumping on yourself to encouragement so that you can move out of a place of gratitude and an encouraged, loved-based place. Move also from the other place of shoulding to choosing, from pretending to agreement, and from avoidance to engagement. So my friends, this has been the end of our series on looking at Wellbeing 101. We came into this exploring what well-being actually was and the need to care and look after yourself. We've looked at some tools with managing your mind, We've looked at mind over mood and what's going on for you emotionally, and we've also looked at 5 proactive habits to strengthen and create a better version of you. Well, my friends, that's us for today and for this series. My hope for you is that you will take some of the key insights and tools that we've looked at across these 4 different talks and put them into practice in your own life so that your well-being increases, your resilience gets enhanced, that you find yourself flourishing and thriving in life far more than even you are right now.
How good was that? We hope you enjoyed that. Hope you took some notes, some takeaways, and we'll see you back here next week.